Ivy, what kind of? I mean, I don't want you to say where you work exactly because I don't want you to get in any trouble. But my God, the fact that you
Yeah.
can do a 1 hour podcast during your
Oh
workday,
yeah.
that's amazing. Are you just that
Of
high
course.
up at work that you can do whatever the fuck you want?
Pretty like they don't like they I could literally be poolside, and as long as I do my job, they don't give a fuck where I am. Like it's just there's there's good there's like positive and negatives to it. Like I work in tech, and I've been working in tech since I was like in my 20s. Like it's been like almost 17, 18 years that I've been in this line of work. And the reason I like it is because there's like so much flexibility involved. That's because at some point I was just like, look, I once had a job where somebody was like scheduling one-on-ones to talk to me about it every time I got in to the office past 9 a.m. And I was just like, I didn't go to school for this. Like, I'm not punching a fucking card. So I'm very lucky to be at a company where like literally I could be anywhere in the world as long as the job gets done.
So I'm assuming you are more on the management side of tech as opposed to doing the tech. Then with that kind of freedom that you
Yeah.
have, yeah, well, you were smart. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's the side you want to be on. You don't want to be one of the grunts, one of the cogs in the wheel. You want to be, in charge of that stuff.
I've definitely been a cog though. I've definitely been a cog. Like I got into tech on accident because my educational background is actually communications, journalism, and psychology. And I had a little bit of experience with tech because like I would work in I was at this temp agency where they would put me on like short-term projects at like large tech companies. So I would do that for a few months. I would get laid off at the summer. I would go party or go travel with my family, and then I'd come back and do it again. And then I worked for a newspaper for not even a year. They fired me while I was pregnant with my son, who's now 15. And so after that, I was like, well, I need a job. So I went back to that temp agency, and I was just like, hey, man, I don't know if you guys have like temp to hire because Cobra is really expensive. I got this kid, and I'm planning on being a single parent. So what can we do here? And then they got me a more permanent role where I stayed at that company for I think the next like 4 or 5 years, and then ever since then it's just been like my resume is just like a whole like it reads like a list of almost every tech company that you could think of in the Bay Area that's like a brand name, which is still very surprising to me because I was always like my family's wild child, and then now I'm working in the same like industry as my dad, and my sister also now works in tech, coming from a nonprofit background. It's wild how we all ended up here. Like none of us, I aside from our dad, who's like an engineer, like I personally don't think I have like a analytic like tech kind of like minds. It's very surprising every time I go into my office. I'm just like, how did we get here?
That's probably what makes it even more frustrating for those that you're in charge of because they spent years and years, focusing on tech and building this very specific skill set, and yet they're still taking orders from someone who had absolutely like no background. But that's the way it always works. Those in management are not the ones who specialize in the skills. It's always something else, and that's
No,
something they don't tell
exactly.
you about.
And I'm very thankful because thankfully I don't manage people. It's like I manage it's more like processes for me. And so like one of the coolest things about being in this line of work is like I started like I guess in a nutshell what I do at my tech job and what I've been doing at all the tech jobs I've had ever since I was in my 20s, and I'm 42 now.
We're the same age.
We are 1981.
80. So I'm actually older than
80.
you.
Oh my, Jesus Christ, my bad, Kuya, my bad. Like I have to respect my elders and shit. And so like like I don't know, like working in tech, I didn't know that there would ever be room for somebody with like, a personality like me. Like I thought from watching my dad all these years that like people with tech minds were completely different from people, because I always thought of myself as like, I'm a creative person, I don't belong here. But there's actually a lot of room in any industry for somebody with like the skill set where something that's valuable is that for me, what I tell people all the time is that I essentially get paid to have uncomfortable conversations with powerful people. So like,
I love uncomfortable conversations with powerful people.
Yeah. Like
I love that.
I literally have uncomfortable conversations for a living. People that are not used to hearing no, and people that are not used to hearing like, what do you mean I can't do this? Like, just at the very least, I want to make sure that they're like, able to do what they need to do without getting audited. Like that's the main thing. It's just like I'm making sure that harm reduction, just like any other thing in life. It's like I can't. You're a grown adult. I can't tell you what to do. But if you're going to do it anyway, here's how you do it without getting in trouble. That's essentially my.
You're essentially a corporate babysitter almost.
Almost.
Yeah.
It's just like it's like having thousands of kids that I never asked for. And there are times where I look at my kid who's 15 and moody, and I'm just like, you know what? He's better behaved than some of these people.
Does it actually cross over? Like you raising your own kid versus having to talk to people that you never hear no.
Absolutely. Like there are some people where there was one man literally where I sent him some guidance on how to proceed with like some request, right? And because I told him, I was just like, you have to make somebody like you have to make a company VP aware at the very least of what you're about to do, which was to give away like this ridiculous amount of like free product at the company that I work for. And this guy came back to me, and rather than ask for clarifying questions that were legitimate, he came back to me and said, well, could you please kindly define awareness? Because I feel like I just want to understand and blah, blah, blah. It's something typical, like that shit when they think that you don't know what you're talking about and they want to just sort of like aim it like it's going in their direction. And so I said, sir, with all due respect, I do not have the bandwidth to educate you on the meaning and definition of awareness. And it's just like, I can't, like the fact that I'm happy to have this conversation is absolutely a little ridiculous. So
he was trying to Bill Clinton whatever that definition of is, right? It's like Jesus.
They're trying to twist it around, and it's just like, and this is a conversation that I have with my dad, because we've me and my dad, my sister, we've worked in tech. Me and my dad have worked in tech for years, and one of the things for me that makes my job sort of not challenging in a bad way, but it's like, being a woman in this line of work and having to have these uncomfortable conversations with people, usually like with that men that don't think that you're going to answer the way that you do because of what I look like. I think they come to me expecting me to have like one answer, and I'm just like, you didn't like. I don't know what other Asian people you've ever encountered with, but I'm not the fucking one. Like, just have some respect. Like, it's wild. Like, I've had to tell people at 11 o'clock, like, I don't work for you. Like, don't ever call me again while I'm watching South Park and having and having Wingstop with my kid. Like, have some fun. And I think there's people that are just like, oh my God, Ivy said that. And I remember one time there was somebody tried to complain to my boss about something, and then his response was just like, Ivy, like, you're a legend. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm just like, well, if this is what my boss is saying, then I don't miss it. I can't tell you like how awesome it is to have a job where like you're supported. I'm not saying that my boss blindly like backs up everything I do, but it's nice to actually work at a place where your professional opinions like mean something and people actually like listen to you.
No, I mean,
because as a woman, I feel like people don't get enough of that.
I don't think. I mean, just in general, right? I mean, that's what the whole educational system, the whole college track, that's what they basically sell us on, is, hey, if you work hard enough, you will be rewarded. But what they tell you is there's no fucking guarantee that you're going to be rewarded at all. You have to be in a proper environment that's actually going to support you, for what you do and wants you to realize your potential. Because there's lots of situations out there where they're just going to milk you for everything they can, and they're going to keep you where you at. They're not going to bring you up, and they're going to, basically milk everything out of you until you burn out and just move on and replace you.
You're just a number to them. Like, they're just at that point, they're not even invested in like whether or not you have a future at this company or even in the industry. Like, they're just like, how much can we possibly exhaust from this person to the point where they're young enough to move on? They're going to move on. They can afford this treatment and blah, blah, blah. But it's just, most people will realize that they don't have to take that. That's no way to have a non-toxic work environment. And like, something I've learned over the years is that I have no problem walking out of jobs and away from people that don't, that aren't like invested in my success. Because I mean, on one hand, we have to be our own like advocate, right? Like no one's going to hand us special treatment. We just have to take it, right? And I think also just being just being in the workforce is one of the reasons why I think I pride myself in having the kind of job that I do, in which I can actually articulate things and like talk to people. I feel like there's a lot of people or a lot of women, like I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I feel like there's some times where, like, maybe in the past, like my mom never felt like she could speak up, like not to my dad, but like just in the workplace. Like I think there's situations where as a woman of color in a predominantly white workplace, like we're trying to find our places and where we belong. And thankfully, I feel like the days are over, or at least dwindling, where people don't listen to us, where we're a minority at work. And it's just like I see that our generation is becoming the people that can make the decisions, and I'm just really excited I think that's what keeps me around, honestly. It's just like I want to see the company, or I want to see the industry evolve to a place where like people that look like you and me, that are covered with tattoos, and those people are in charge, because they're not thinking about like old with the standards anymore. Now they're thinking about who's just qualified to do the job, and does it really matter where they're sitting. Like everyone can bring something to the table.
Well, to be fair, you're also in a very good position too, right? So why would you want to leave something so good?
Exactly. People ask me all the time, like, at what point are you going to ever quit comedy? At what point are you ever going to quit your day job for comedy? I was like, I would absolutely never fucking quit my job. Like, it just comedy, like unless comedy starts paying the same kind of medical benefits, unless they allow me to take care of my family without asking people for anything. Maybe one day when a comedy club gets a heated bidet like they have at my office, then maybe I would consider leaving my
that
job.
sounds like heaven. I mean, most Asians know what you're talking about, but I don't know how many Americans have ever even experienced bidets in general. Although it is starting to catch on. From remember when I left, it's starting to catch on over there. You see it on Amazon a whole lot more.
The Brondell ones, like I remember one of my so my sister, she taught in Japan for a few years. She taught in Japan for a couple of years, like in between undergrad, and then before she left for grad school on the East Coast, she was in Japan for a couple of years. And so, like, that's one of the first places that I experienced like
the
a Japanese
heated bidet.
toilet. Like they do the bidet. They have like the music, so that I guess
yeah,
so that they don't hear you. I guess so. Presumably, people don't hear you shitting. And then they have like the air, the hot air that they blow on your ass when you're finished washing your ass. And I was just super excited to see something like that was so different, because my sister and I had gone to Asia with our family, and we had made a stop. This is like in Thailand somewhere, and it was like a hole in the ground. And I'm pretty sure that like Thailand has bidets, but just not in the area that we were in. And so going from that to like having a machine blow like water into our asshole felt different.
Some Alex, do you know Alex Woody?
Yeah, I know Alex Woody.
Yeah, no, I was doing his podcast, and he brought up something to me that I never realized, because somehow we ended up talking about bidets too. I think I was trying to sell him on it. So I love it. He even said, you know what, you Filipinos, you guys are really kind of obsessed with having clean assholes.
We are!
It's like, yeah, I never thought about that, but it does seem like we kind of are.
Like we have, like, whether it's a bidet, I have actually had to explain tabos to people. I was like, it's an ass bucket. I've literally called it an ass bucket just to describe it, because I can't imagine, like, I don't know, like, just imagine like the kind of food that we eat. Let's say like we have like some sort of like handaan, and then somebody has to ebak. I can't imagine paper being adequate to clean that shit up. Like, I wouldn't wipe my baby's ass with just a piece of paper and cottonelle and call it a day. Like, I feel like I'd have to go to town. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense, right? It's like what they always say: if you got some mud on your hands, and I'm going to offer you either a paper towel or a wet wipe, what are you going to use, right? You're going to use the wet wipe, but then for some reason, for our ass, we want to go with paper. It's like, it makes no sense.
Right.
You can tell I'm really passionate about this, right? How animated I'm getting. No, but you know what?
I always have some sort of wipes in my car, some sort of wipes in my
Oh
purse.
yeah, hell
Like,
yeah.
like the last thing I want, especially being on the road for comedy, like the last thing I want is to be at some shitty truck stop with like mud ass. Like I don't want that. I
Yeah.
want no part of that. Like my ancestors didn't do what they did. Like they didn't do what they did, and my parents didn't like
Oh,
escape martial
you're
law to
getting
come to
deep
America.
about it. Oh,
So I could cut my asshole on a Starbucks napkin. It's
yeah.
not gonna happen.
I think that's the part they edited out of Martin Luther King's speech there in Washington, right? When
He had a dream.
when he had a
He
dream.
had a dream that that I'm gonna be judged by the content of my
But
bowel
yeah,
movement.
but you know what?
Like
Yeah, I always have wet wipes in my car. I have wet wipes in the bag that I bring around every day. You gotta be prepared, you know.
you have to. Like one time I went to Green Hills. Oh my God. I went to Green Hills and nobody had like, I was unprepared. I had no, like, I was like asking if anyone had toilet paper. There was no toilet paper.
Oh, they didn't tell you
my
about
shitty-
it.
They didn't. My shitty Tagalog wasn't getting anywhere. So I had no choice but to go through my own wallet and I wiped my ass with a receipt from Unicle 79 from when I, like I wiped my ass with a gas receipt.
Oh my God, that is like so sharp.
A story that is circulating with my family, right? Like just that story. Like they're like that's all they talk about. They're like, Cheng, do you remember the time that you like ebacked at Green Hills? Do you remember the time that you ebacked at like the Manila Hotel and the lady that was there said, Nako, like they thought it was like a dead patayang daga or something. They thought it was like a dead rat or some shit. Like I have a lot of memories of pooping in the Philippines.
You know what? Just to go back, I actually, when I was in Japan back in June, my brother lives over there, so I got to try one of those home toilets with the bidets, the really nice ones. And I have to say, it's really too gentle, like for my taste, because like over here in the Philippines,
Right.
it's not the automatic ones, it's the manual ones, and like they are really strong and aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of sucks because you kind of gotta be a sniper about it. Your aim's gotta be spot on. But like the pressure is like really high. So I mean, it's really cleaning it out. So when I tried the ones in Japan, it was just like so gentle. I don't know if it's actually really doing anything other than, tickling my ass and making me feel good and putting a smile on my face, right? It's like, but I don't know if it's actually doing the job.
Right. At that point, it feels like it's more for your prostate than it is for your sphincter.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I have to borderline. Like I don't like it when it feels like it's just a little like trickle of like water. I want to feel like I'm sandblasting my asshole.
Exactly.
Like almost.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just like who the hell is going to have some sort of like those pressure washers, those pressure hoses. What's the point of having a pressure hose if you can't like take care of like all the shit that's like cluttering your gutters, right? So it's just like I have always like when I use a bidet, I always imagine that it's sort of like like those carnival games where you're shooting water into the clown's mouth and the clown's going up. Like instead of the clown's mouth, it's my asshole, and I feel like it should be. I have a lot of feelings about this.
Oh, so do I. So do I.
I have a lot of feelings about like about how to clean your ass.
I mean, I think we're proving that Filipinos are obsessed completely with clean assholes.
Obsessed.
No, but that is the perfect way to describe it, because like that's the way it is over here. It's literally a nozzle that you shoot water with, and you've got to aim.
Yeah.
You got to aim without seeing too, so it's all by feel, right? It's all intuitive. Yeah. And the worst part is when you're
drunk and doing that at night.
The worst part is when you aim. Your aim is off, is a little bit too close, and the water ends up spraying back on your hand. It's like, God damn it! It's like, I gotta wash my hands so well. After that. But the thing is, like, people in America, they don't really understand just how superior the bidet and wet wipe combination,
Right,
so if you want the peace of mind, that you're not going to have the tire tracks.
You're not going to have the tire tracks. You're not going to have like skid marks. You're not going to have like a dingleberry.
Oh,
or
yeah.
some shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't like, it's just, it's crazy that like, there's so many people that have not yet gotten on board with the bidets. And yet those are the same people that are surprised that nobody wants to eat their ass. Like, come on.
Why do you think that holds people back? Because like I said, when you think about if you get mud on your hands, the choice is obvious. What do you think the barrier is there that people just can't seem to get over that in places like the States?
I think people can't reconcile. Like, I don't know. Like, I would think that people would want to have like a clean ass, but I think also maybe they were conditioned to not think that there's anything back there to clean aside from just like wet wipes. And I don't know. Like, because I've heard people say shit like, you don't need to like wash, like you don't need to wash yourself. Like vaginas are self cleaning. Yeah, they're self cleaning. We're just saying that like that doesn't mean that you shouldn't like take a towel and like go to town. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's some weird cultural divide where people have accepted that like a little twang is cool, and I'm just like I can't, dude. Like I can't. Like I'm the kind of person that like I will wash my ass before I go to the OBGYN. I know they see pussy all day and this wouldn't be anything new, but at the same time I'm just like there has to be like some cultural like I feel like a cultural ambassador. Like we have bidets and tabos, and if you see me as a Filipino person with swamp ass, I feel like that would be doing my entire country, like my country, a disservice. Like no, like if one thing you're going to say about me, like say what you will about my mental health and my ADHD, but you'll never be able to say that I had a swamp ass.
I'm sure your OBGYN like totally appreciate. You're probably their favorite client. So who we got on the docket today? Oh yeah, okay. You got Ivy coming in. All right.
And you know what's nuts, dude? Like my OBGYN, they've always been men. Like one of them was a dude that used to work. So his family, he comes from a rich ass family. His family owns like one of the like feminine products, right? So his like family name is on it, and he's part of that family. And so I was just like in my head, so this guy has like drugstore money and still chooses a line of work every day where he gets to just talk about vagina. I was like, that I respect. And then the second OBGYN that I had when I changed medical providers, because I went from Kaiser to Sutter Health, and he just retired actually, so I'm in the market for a new one, but he was a gay man. So my OBGYN was a gay man.
Yeah, to me, I figured like you would have to be a gay man if you go into OBGYN. Like, well, if you're a straight man, why on earth would you want to do it? Like, it sounds really good. Like the first 5 minutes, like, oh yeah, I got to look at pussy all day. But it's just like anything else. Once it's your job, like after that, you don't want, pussy's going to be the last thing you want to see.
Did I ever tell you? So did I ever tell you that like before I went to comedy like full time, and before like this is like while I was still working, and this has always been like part of my volunteer work, but I had to.
You do volunteer work?
Yeah. So my volunteer work for years was I volunteered as a sex educator in the kink community in San Francisco, California. So I was an intern for this group that basically they specialized in science-based, evidence-based, like non-religious, like non-judgmental, just plain old sex education. I did this in San Francisco, and then I was part of the training staff. I was part of a staff of people that we put together to like a fall and a spring training for modern human sexuality. And it was 60 hours, so it was basically like 4 non-consecutive weekends. And one of the things that we talked about as sex educators was like we had a lot of we did lectures about like my lectures were really tough. My lectures were about like sex and commerce, which was like prostitution, which was like sex toys, sex and disability, sex and trauma, sex and drugs, and basically the reason I brought that up is because like one of the things that I had to do is I had to put together this compilation of porn for our students. It wasn't meant to be like shock value. It was just more so a chance to see like what porn was like over the years, like everything from like Victorian porn to like people dressed in pandas and like circle jerking this person dressed like a person in a diaper. It's not supposed to be like, again, shock value. It's more like for every person that's watching it, all the students, to kind of check what their own judgments are, because no matter how grossed out we might feel about something, that's somebody's kink. And so for me, watching, like being exposed to all that stuff, like sort of, I don't want to say desensitized me, but like it stopped being, because I was looking at like I was looking at like porn all the time. I was looking at like slideshows. I was looking at like x-rays of penises with different things going on. After a while, like there's almost nothing sexy about it. It becomes almost like super clinical. Like it's just like at that point you're just like, I get to look at dicks all day, and this is not exactly how I imagined it.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got desensitized to it, right? That's why there's that whole what do they call it, epidemic of young males who can't even get it up anymore because they just watch porn since they were like 11, 12 years old, like 20-year-olds who just can't get it up because they've grown up on porn and they're completely desensitized.
Yeah, like are that's not the same category as incels, is it?
No, incels is just those basic they're basically the losers who just can't get laid, right? Just have no.
Right.
I mean, to put it simply, right? That's just what it is. No, these are just young guys who literally just can't get it up because they've watched so much porn that. Because the thing is, I mean, you kind of went down that rabbit hole yourself, right? The more porn you watch, the kinkier and kinkier and kinkier it has to get in order to actually arouse any sort of, reaction from your body. And so these guys have just gone so far down the rabbit hole. Like it's like I have a bit that I wrote that I haven't tried out yet. Like it's like you're really watching too much porn when your search query is basically a paragraph, or you start writing in like complete sentences, right? So I mean, but that's what like these young guys have basically gotten into, and personally, that's why I really, I've made multiple attempts at not watching porn anymore because it really does change the brainwave pattern. But one thing I want to like go back to real quick is you said Victorian porn. Like, what kind of form does that even take? Because is it like those biblical drawings, or like
they have things, and like when people on TV talk about like silent film or whatever, and it's always like a black and white, and you have like some person with like bloomers and like boots and shit. Like there's actually been a lot of like they have like drawings, they have like girls that pose for like painted portraits, like their porn. It took different forms. Not so different from what we have today, but it's just, of course, based on what the technology was at the time, and what the sexual sensibilities were. That's what they're looking at, and so it's crazy, like how very overtly explicit stuff is today. Like it's so crazy because, like, I feel like even when we were younger, a lot of the stuff that we would see in porn was just like implied, but like, yeah, no, now you see like an entire fucking forearm. You know what I mean? I'm just like, bro, I can't. But yeah, I've seen a lot of that stuff because it's like, one of the things that we have to talk about is, we have to talk about people and alternative like sexual practices and stuff like that. And I remember one time my kid overheard me talking about a phrase, and he Googled prolapsed anus because he heard me talking about it on the phone.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I saw it on his iPad. I was like, there's no way. He probably said it into the, there's no way that a kid that age is going to learn how to type like prolapsed anus. So he did voice search, and I was like, is there, and I held up his iPad. I was like, while we're here, do you have any questions for me?
How old was he?
And he was like, he was 8. And he was like, is this what happens when people don't wipe?
And you're like, said, yes.
Yeah.
And they don't eat their vegetables. That's exactly what happens. Right?
Exactly. You don't want your asshole to flip inside out. Eat your vegetables and go to bed. Like,
oh my God.
You do what you got to do. And there were times, dude, where like my and this is kind of an interesting gig too, because like I would always get sent sex toys that companies wanted us to use like in our lectures for demos and things like that. And my excuse me, my son would be like, he would see the boxes piling up, and kids that are like 8 or 9, they're into these videos called unboxing videos on YouTube. And and he'd be like, Mom, there's like 10 of those boxes. Like, are we ever going to open them? No, we are not. Like, there were just so many fucking toys. And at some point, like, I ended up giving most of the toys away to my girlfriends for Christmas. Like, we had a white elephant, and I was just like, well,
you were the most popular woman at the party that day.
I'm telling you, like, once I started giving the presents, they're just like, what are you doing for Easter? What are you doing for Thanksgiving? Like, what? Like, I just had so many to get rid of, because we would go on part of that gig allowed me to go on tours of like factories. There was one in LA called Doc Johnson. It's actually like family owned. So it was like owned by like this man and his son and daughter, who were obviously adults, they were helping them run it. And I remember like I took that tour with one of my friends, and then we had lunch with like all the employees that had been there for like 20 years. And so we're just like, so you've been here for 20 years, what do you tell your kids you do? Like, do you tell them that you actually like do the assembly parts for toys? They're like, oh no, Mia, I just say plastics. I'm like, oh my god. So,
Smart.
but it's really cool. Yeah, and I honestly thought that like having something like that, I thought that they would. I thought that after a tour like that, they would just send us home with like maybe like a T-shirt or some like marketing materials. When I tell you that I got sent home with like 2 full tote bags of like their higher end sex toys, and I had to get on the plane with that, like Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was just like, these are all going to be someone's presents, because like what am I going to do with like, what am I going to do with 40 fake dicks? Like, can I just at least have one real one that works? Like, preferably attached to somebody I know. So, but yeah, that was like the most interesting volunteer work I ever had, and I'm still very close to a lot of those people.
Yeah, I have to
like,
say, I'm really surprised to hear that the kink community needed sex education, because I would think they would be very educated, considering they're really into their kinks, right? That kind of like goes hand in hand. But that's interesting. How did that happen? That they need.
So it's not so much for them. It's so much. So our sex education is for others. It's not for like children, God forbid. It's for basically anyone that has their own clientele that they need to talk to about like modern human sexuality. So our training is to prepare other people to be educators as well. Like, that's why it's called the sex educator training, so that they can get some sort of like, they get certification, they can go on and apply for other things because they have the 60 hours of training under their belt. Because let's say you have, so the majority of our students, I had a few adult film stars. Absolutely. I remember one of them actually invited me to the Avian. Are you familiar with Avian?
Yeah, of course. Come on. Yeah. It's like, you've never been? Come on, Ivy.
So Avian, right? Like I got like they actually sent an invite to, and I couldn't go because it was the same day as my son's 5th birthday at Chuck E. Cheese.
So it was a serious porn star that you knew then, like a big name.
There's a couple of big names. I'll tell you off the record who some of.
You don't want to name?
Some of them were.
Okay, you'll have to, once we have this, I'm going to have to hear some of these names, see if I know any of them.
No, absolutely. I got you. And so, but yeah, like I had, like that, a lot of our people were, like adult film stars, people that worked in, like people that did sex work, and also people like, we had like nurse practitioners, we had, social workers, we have like therapists. And the reason for that is, let's say you have a child that has like a emotional, like a mental health issue. You want them to go to a therapist, but let's say that mental health issue is it's tied to like gender identity or body dysphoria, like they don't identify in the body that they're in. You want to make sure that whoever you're sending your child to discuss this issue has some sort of credibility as far as like understanding things like transgender identity, or like, you don't, it's very, I imagine it would be very frustrating, for your child to have like sort of 21st century problems, and then you're sending them to a therapist that hasn't seen their own penis since like the Clinton administration. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that this person is actually like versed on how to identify the problem with your child. So it's like, our sex education, it prepares people that have their own clientele to be able to talk to those people about topics pertaining to modern human sexuality.
How did you get involved in this whole world?
So I was pursuing. I was getting another bachelor's degree. I was getting a.
3 wasn't enough for you, huh?
Just two wasn't enough for me. So
well, I thought you had 3 majors, right?
So I had communications and journalism. That's basically that's one major with an emphasis.
Oh, okay.
And then so my other degrees are in psychology and social action was the emphasis on my for my psych degree. And then I was doing that, and then we had to do an internship, and they're just like, well, Ivy, what are you interested? Like, what kind of things are you interested in? Because I knew I wanted to do something that pertained to sexual health. But a lot of the stuff at the time that I could have volunteered with, they were all like things like people that are recovering from sexual assault, and all those things are important. But I knew that there was something additional that I wanted to do on top of that, where it could pertain to like education, where instead of like, because there are some people that have a hard time accessing sex information and sex education, especially like with me, like as a Filipino American. The fact that I was so interested in this, like my parents got me books because they didn't know how to approach those conversations, but they did know that it was important to talk about them, so they got me books. And I'm just like, I want to do something where I'm, non-judgmental, non-judgmental sex education. Like, it's very straightforward. If somebody wants to ask about like choking, it's like, I'm not trying to talk them out of it. This is how you do choking without dying or killing somebody else. And so my program director put me in touch with another professor who used to be a lecturer at she was a lecturer at the school, and now she's a lecturer at Stanford. And then she connected me to the people in San Francisco whose organization I joined, and they're called San Francisco Sex Information. And so they've actually been around since the 70s. They used to have a switchboard that people could call to get information, and the switchboard obviously no longer exists. But they would have like emails and things like that where people could ask like questions, and they could be like anonymous too. Because there's people that were calling from. I mean, we take for granted that like we have access to. We have like, especially being on the West Coast and also like in a larger like major like metropolitan area. These things are pretty easily accessible. But let's say somebody is calling from a town where they can't even order sex toys off of Amazon because of like obscenity laws, or PayPal's going to shut down their shit. Those are the other audiences that we have to take into consideration when we're thinking about how to safely distribute like factual science-based sex information.
How to smuggle dildos into those areas that are basically sex toy deserts, right?
Exactly. Like buy in box. Like, they haven't figured out everything. We'll get there. Like, it'll be a cultural awakening.
This is volunteer work you're still doing, or no more?
No. Like, we actually haven't had trainings since the pandemic, because like part of it is like stuff that we would do like online. Like, they would do their homework like in an LMS, so a learning management system, online. But like, it was impossible to continue the trainings because we would have to, like, the trainings would always all take place like in person. And we would do them in like different office buildings. I was very lucky because when I was doing the training, when I was still a student, and then I became an intern, I did my training. I got my certification back when they were teaching these classes in the San Francisco Armory. Are you familiar with that building?
No.
So the Armory, this is fun. So the Armory is this building in San Francisco. I think it used to be like some sort of like military. It looks like a military fort.
Oh, I'm sure it is military. Just the fact that it's called Armory, right?
The Armory, and it's on 16th and it's like 16th and Mission, like that part of San Francisco. But it used to be the kink.com headquarters, like their headquarters. So I would be like, in between classes, we would be in the break room and heating up some food, and then you see some guy like pull off like a ball gag, and he's heating up like a Tupperware and just like talking to somebody casually and shit. It was cool. Like, it was a really fun environment to be a part of. And I took my son to some parts of my training because like, I just like, well, I don't have a sitter for you. And so it was very cool. Like, they would put him in another classroom and then give him headphones so that he could watch like cartoons and play quietly while mommy's lecturing about fisting 3 doors down. You know what I mean? Like,
I thought you were going to say they gave him his own ball gag so that he doesn't feel left out. You're doing that motion.
First of all, ball gag, it's called a pacifier, Mike. Get it together.
Oh, so sorry. I need to take one of those workshops. If you let me know if you're going to run another one.
I got you. I mean,
yeah,
that was such a fun part of my life, though. Like, it's just like, it's fun.
That's one of those things, like, I don't think people realize how much there is to just sex education in general. Because I remember when I was in college doing GE, I took a human sexuality class, obviously, because I'm a guy. And it turned out to be. I was like, oh, what am I gonna take for GE? I wonder what's the choices,
Right.
right? And it was probably one of the hardest classes I ever took. I ended up
Oh, it's
only, I
ridiculous.
ended up just like struggling to get a B plus. I couldn't believe like how hard it was, how much information I had to
Oh
retain. It's
yeah.
like, oh my god, I had no idea. I mean, it was really fun, but I just did not expect there to be that much information to it. I mean, I was a stupid 19-year-old. You know how guys are, how dumb guys are
Oh
at
yeah.
19, right? Like, yeah,
There's like guys that especially at that age, they're just like, what do you mean I can't spit on it? Like it's
yeah. I mean, you're just raised, you're just like, raging with testosterone at that age, right? Like you really can't help it. I remember during one like group exercise, there was a class exercise. We were all supposed to write down, what is it, that you're looking for in a partner, like sexually or not even sexually, just in general. And
yeah.
I'd written down some few things, and I think I'd written down, someone who gives really good head. Yeah, I'm so deep, right? And someone who makes a and someone who makes a really good sandwich. It's like, and then so the teacher's just reading out loud. It's like, oh, geez, yeah, I know what you're thinking with over here. But it's like, you're a guy, you're 19 years old. It's like,
Course. Like you're not thinking about the future. You're thinking about blowjobs and bread. Like that's as far as it goes.
yeah,
Like
I mean, looking back on it, I really don't blame girls at that age for going out with older guys. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, the selection, at that age of guys, it's not great.
No, absolutely not. Like I was telling I forgot who I was having this conversation with, but like I feel like I had zero business dating anybody until I was at least 35. Honestly, like I had
Yeah.
no business. No business. And I'm just like I'm at the point where I'm just like I'm ready to renounce all sex I've ever had before the age of 30, including when I conceived my son. Like just he's a miracle. Like that's it. Like that's it.
I have to ask you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing like that really fascinated me about you when we first met, when we did that show together, and you told me you took was it like an 8-year break from comedy to focus on raising your son, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what was that like? Because a lot of people, and by a lot of people, I mean me. Because that's no, because like that's one of the things I always like. Because everyone's always pressuring my wife and I to have kids, right? And for me, it's like, what, we just started this whole passive income thing, with these Airbnb properties. I just really started dipping my toes into the world of stand-up comedy. It's like, I'm kind of just starting to, really just kind of live the life that I want and starting to really chase after something that I really want. I feel like, having kids is just going to throw a wrench into that whole thing. But you kind of proved that all wrong, because you took 8 years off to focus on your kid, and you're definitely still in the comedy game.
Yeah. Like I knew, excuse me. I knew that for me, it wasn't just raising my son, although that was clearly important. I had to get my shit together because like I was 26 when I got pregnant. And so it's crazy when I see all these young comics now, like 25, 26, I try to picture any of them as parents. And I'm just like, oh my God, jail immediately. Like, I don't think anybody that age goes into, parenthood thinking, knowing that they're going to succeed. But like, for a minute, I tried to still do comedy. Like I don't think I ever told you the decision that really like pushed me over the edge as far as like I need to take this break, because I was still trying to keep in touch with people. I was still trying to like email people for shows, and then I got this gig at SF State, and the San Francisco State gig was basically a comedy show spotlighting Asian American women in comedy. So to give you some context, I had a 6-month-old baby at home, and Ali Wong was the headliner. Like that's how long ago this was.
Oh wow, yeah, back when she was still in the city.
Yeah. And so I did this show completely unprepared, ate a fat dick. And, by that, which is still a little harsh for me because like, it wasn't like it was totally silent. It wasn't like I bombed my dick off, but by my own standards, it wasn't great. And I just remember thinking like, I'm done. I can't do this. I gotta make a choice. It was embarrassing. And so, so after that, I just, I stopped doing comedy like altogether. Like I stopped doing stand up. At some point, like when my son was a little older, the theater group that I was a part of, where I started comedy. They had me in a sketch comedy group, and I was trying to convince myself that I was happy. And I just wasn't. I wasn't happy doing sketch. I wasn't happy doing improv. One of the things that did happen with that group, and they were actually, I don't know if you saw a recent copy of like Vogue Philippines. The group is called Granny Cart Gangsters. They were featured in Vogue Philippines. That was the old sketch comedy group that I was a part of, and so I wasn't happy, not because they weren't doing great stuff, but it's just I wasn't happy in that environment. I wasn't happy doing that kind of thing. I was really trying to fight the idea that I wanted to go back to stand up, and then at some point doing theater. They didn't have enough time to do quick changes. So rather than do a quick change, they would just have me do stand up in between like each scene so that they have enough time to change clothes. And then I was like, fuck, I missed this. So in 2016, like 2017, like my job at the time was sending me to LA a lot. So I would do I did a couple of UCB classes. I did some open mics because I was just like, I know I have to get back to doing comedy in the Bay Area at some point. And then that's when I finally decided, like 2017, I was like, okay, I'm going to approach this differently than I did when I was in my 20s. Because when I came back to comedy, I was already in my mid 30s. I had a son, I had a corporate job, my own apartment. Like I had grown up responsibilities. Like I wasn't like a lot of these dudes kicking it after, or people kicking it after open mics, like just hooking up with other people. Like I had like legitimate grown up fucking, like I have a child to support. I have things like that. So that 8-year break honestly was the best thing I could have done for myself, because like if I had kept going at the rate that I was going when I was young, and with the habits that I had, which was like getting drunk on stage and like just being crazy in general, like staying up all night in not even comedy clubs, like just getting gigs at like bars after hours and things like that. Like it just wasn't sustainable. And so like when I came back and I decided to do it like in my 30s, I was like, okay, I'm not going to party with people. It took me like 3 years to even think about like even dating anyone in that environment, because I was just so laser focused on doing this correctly. And to be honest, I didn't consider that it could be like a career choice until my dad brought it up, and he was just like, "You're really, really serious about this, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, just make sure that your son has health insurance, but keep doing it." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah,
Like I was really relieved to have that conversation.
because I remember when I first when I started doing it, I don't know, 2021, 2022. I remember just because you got to be a member of Bacon on Facebook, right? That's when you're starting out. It's your lifeline to it's a lifeline to the mics, to opportunities for gigs. If you're just really starting out, you have no
if you're
network,
really starting out,
right?
if
You
you're really
gotta
starting
have
out,
it, right? But I remember
yeah.
at that time, like your names was one of the ones I would always see, on shows or just getting thrown around. So it's like in my mind, I was like, okay, this girl's like pretty damn established here in the Bay Area, at the very least. And so I would never have guessed that you took that much time off. So like during those 8 years you took off, I mean, were you just showing your face around at all, or did you just completely drop off the planet?
I was gone. I was straight up gone. Like I threw away my shit. I was gone. Like so during that 8 years, like I was doing other things. I was working on, I was like working on my trying to get like a better job. Like I wasn't really happy with I wasn't really happy where I was in terms of company. During that time, I got married, not to my son's father. I got married to someone else. That didn't work out. So a lot of like really adult decisions and really adult things happened during that 8 years that I was gone. But it was, I think what was cool about it is that like this is kind of a fun one, right? Like so that theater thing I was telling you about, where I had to do comedy in between like each in each scene. One of the old friends that I had from that theater that's still doing comedy today. You know Joseph, right?
Joseph Annalyn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
So
I did one show with him. He's hilarious.
He's a beast, dude.
Yeah.
Me and Joseph met in theater. We met at Bindlesville, which is like the theater in question that I'm talking about. So that's where we met. And Kevin Cameo was our he was like he did a workshop for us. He was basically like our first comedy mentor. And then so Joseph came to one of those shows, and like one of the feedbacks, like because it was one of those like theater shows where you could like give feedback on the whatever, like well, like any feedback for the actors, blah 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 blah. And they're just like, I should come back to comedy. And I never knew one way or the other if Joseph or somebody else wrote it, but it was the night that he showed up. So I'm just like, I should go back to comedy. And so, but yeah, like, sorry, what was your original question?
No, because I was just wondering, like, taking all that time off, if you didn't show your face on the scene at all.
Yeah. Nope, no, not at all. Like when I decided to come back to comedy, I didn't know anybody. Like I knew that Joseph was still around. I knew that there were a couple people from San Jose that were like Pete Munoz, he was still around. There were some other folks that were like that I vaguely remembered, like names I remembered. But I knew that I couldn't go to them about it because it's just like it had been way too long. And some people I knew had quit. And so what I did was you know, did you ever hear of the place called Brainwash?
Yeah, it's legendary.
Okay.
Tony Sparks was hosting it, right?
Yeah. So fun fact, when I got pregnant with my son, I announced that pregnancy during an open mic at Brainwash. I didn't know how to I hadn't told my family yet. I hadn't told my son's father. I hadn't told anybody. I was trying to work out.
Yeah, so you're workshopping it in front of the comics.
Yeah. And I did it at fucking Brainwash. And then after my set, obviously the set went well. They're just like, fuck yeah, Ivy, take this shot. And I was like, I can't. They're just like, oh my God, you're serious. So yeah, so Tony Sparks ran that, right? And so Tony Sparks found out that I was pregnant before my family did, which is why he's the godfather. And so Brainwash was having this anniversary show, right? And I didn't know anybody that was on stage. I do now, obviously, but like I didn't know anybody. So I just walked in and I sat down at a seat without saying hi or anything to anybody. And then Tony Sparks came right up to me, put a cupcake on the desk that I was sitting at, and gave me a hug and said, welcome back. He was like, welcome home.
Wow.
Like I hadn't been, it had been years. I hadn't seen anybody in years. And like, I was crying all the way home on Bart. I was like, oh my God, like, Tony Sparks is still alive. Like, just shit like that. Right. So so like I basically,
you say Tony Sparks is still alive. That's what you were moved by, the fact that he's not dead. Not the fact that he still remembered you, just the fact that he was alive. I thought he was going to be dead for sure.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, he had terrible cholesterol. So he, but I've known Tony for years. I love Tony.
He's a great guy.
Like, to answer your question, I never, I knew that I was just going to have to start from the very beginning. I knew that I was going to have to start from scratch and do the work. And so, I quietly was just like grinding away. And I think I was grinding away for, 2016 through, 2018, 2019 was when I finally, when things started to get to the point where I no longer had to ask people to be on their shows. Like at that point, I was getting stuff. All the stuff that I've been getting was from like word of mouth.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the ways we can track our progress as comics, especially at this level, right? It's like how much are you asking to be on shows versus how much are you getting asked, right? And once you start moving more and more towards that second category, okay, I'm really starting to move up here, right? And then when you start building your way to club shows as opposed to just bar shows or random places but I mean. Wow, I'm really quite inspired because that is one of the things I worry about by, being over here in the Philippines and taking as much time as I do over here because, comedy is cool and everything, but I also have this other dream where I don't want to work ever again. And that's what I'm doing here, building the passive income stream, right? So that eventually I'll just be able to do nothing but comedy, but yet I'm still going to be able to live an amazingly comfortable life because of all this passive income that's come. But I do worry about it just being gone for so long, because especially this level where I'm at, like those relationships and having your face seen, it's like, that's so much of it, to be gone for so long. It's like, but you know what? I was surprised when I came back in June. I was gone. I think I was gone for 9 months, and I was really quite pleasantly surprised. Well, I didn't realize how much of a good foundation I had laid with people within the comedy community.
That makes all the difference. That really makes all the difference because something that I tell a lot of young, or maybe not young, but newer comics is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one of the
definitely
things
not
that you
young
want
when
to
it comes to
do.
me. Thanks.
Just
It's like, like you
yeah,
have to
you look
add that addendum. Well, maybe not young, but
maybe not young, like chronologically, although you do look a lot younger than a lot of those people that are legitimately young
uh,
because you are not a sloppy
no, I
drug
mean,
addled
yeah, that
person.
helps, and then
You
our
know what I mean?
genetics help too. Asians is like,
Look, dude, like we're in our 40s.
yeah, I
Look at
know,
this shit. Like
yeah, I know.
I'm never gonna get that buccal fat removal because I'm not trying to look like fucking Maleficent and shit.
Yeah,
So like yeah, just establishing yourself is such a good, like, something I tell young comics all the time is that take the time that you need. Just make sure that you have your personal life separate from comedy, because I think what you're doing is the right thing. Like, you're taking care of yourself before this comedy shit, because the thing about comedy is that, like, one, it's always going to be there, but two, like, you're not missing nearly as much as you think you're missing. Like, your life and your comfort and the people around you that truly matter are what has to come first, because none of this comedy shit at the end of the day, like, they're not going to be the people that are showing up for you. You know what I mean? Like, we're doing this for us and we're doing this because we love it, but like, a lot of these people in this comedy game, the handful of people that you love and trust, like, those are the people that you hold on to, because 90% of these people don't give a fuck. Like, they don't. And
yeah.
I learned that real quick, like, just, or not quick, but like, just coming to terms with that and making that differentiation between the people that I can genuinely call friends versus like my actual life outside of comedy, because so much of my actual life I feel like takes place outside of comedy, and I used to be terrible with like having that balance. And this year was just like the year that turned everything on its ass, and that's why I'm thankful that I have now a little bit of separation
You know
between
what?
that and
I'm glad you
comedy.
brought that up because I did. That is something I wanted to touch before we end here. Is I did see that post of
Yeah.
yours. Where you were talking about how you completely lacked balance for so many years in your life, and you've something happened where you're finally like having. What was the tipping point? Like, what happened that you finally just said, what, fuck it. This really has to change, and I'm doing way too much. I'm not doing enough for myself. So what happened?
So there's some stuff that I probably have to talk to you about off the record,
Okay.
but like, in a nutshell, this year, my therapist and my academic advisor were both just like, they basically both gave me different variations of, Ivy, you are running yourself into the ground, and if you don't slow down, some shit's going to happen. And so that's precisely what happened, is some shit. And so like, this has probably been the year that I think I've been the least productive professionally. And by that I mean, like, I'm doing obviously great shows. I have good things coming up, but like, there was a point where I was literally I was working my full-time job, my current job. I was doing graduate school at the same time, and I was doing like 4 to 6 shows a week, like, just all that kind of stuff. Barely saw my family, barely got any rest, barely was home for like anything, like, or I would have to go in the other direction and prove that even though I had this crazy busy schedule, I was still going to show up at all my son's shit. So I would like literally go from the airport and like just book it to like, so I could stand right at the stadium and like watch the marching band go thing. And then knowing I had to take a nap and then get up for like a 7 o'clock or a 6 o'clock call, depending on who I'm talking to. And nobody in my family thought to say anything. And I'm not blaming them, because it's just like, I come from a long line of like workaholics, and going and going and going just felt normal. Like, I was the person that, like, if I looked at my Outlook calendar and I saw that I didn't have anything, I would immediately be like, did I just get fired? Like, I'd freak out because there's nothing to do. And so like, they were just like, my doctor was finally just like, enough, because like my mental health was also starting to suffer. I was prone to more like manic episodes. There was some shit that happened recently where I was off my meds for like 2 weeks and just like ended up in the hospital. It was bad. And
Wow.
so and so like, I took a medical. So what happened is I took a medical leave of absence from the program that I was doing, my master's program, and like, I might finish it next year. I might not. Like, I feel like, like with that like with that post, like, I'm just like, this is the year where I'm finally just going to start choosing myself. And here's another good example of like what happened, of like where the universe like really like sort of like forced me to just slow down. So there was a situation where so there was a situation where I was in the hospital, and then the next day I literally went straight back to work because that was the only thing that made me feel normal. And then when my cat died, I could not take time off. Like I cried for 2 days, and then I had to keep going because I had a leadership presentation at my corporate job that was like writing, like a lot of stuff was writing on it, and I was able to I was forced to like compartmentalize and just be like, well, I got to go to work. And then I had to do shows because I had pulled out of way too many shows. I was like, I have to do these shows. And then the next day after the show, I got COVID. And so finally, it was like finally the universe was like, all right, now you have to stop. Now you have to slow down, bitch. Like that's it. That's it. You got COVID now. So like I was literally forced to just like isolate in my room for like 2 weeks. But it was good because it forced me to like relax and slow down because I wasn't doing any of that. I wasn't taking care of myself, and it's still a struggle because for me, I always want to be doing something, and I always feel like weird about myself if I don't. But like something that I had to learn this year is that like I'm 42, like nobody cares. Like why am I putting all this pressure on myself to be productive? Like I'm over teen no sleep. Like let me just take care of myself before I burn out and stop being functional to the people that need me. And like it's crazy, Mike, because this is the year that I spent the most time with my family. And I've lived with my entire family for the last like ever since we all moved in together during the pandemic. And it's been like what 3 years, and this is still the first year that I spent the most time with them. And that's crazy. Like the fact that we lived together for 3 years and I was almost never home. Like
And have they, voiced out loud, oh wow, you're spending so much time with us. This is really fun. Or are they just typical Asians about it and never say anything?
no, I think they've gotten more like they've definitely like I think they've liked it. They used to tease me a little bit too. Like, I would be home at like 6 o'clock. I remember like my dad came home from work once and he was like, what are you doing here? And I looked at him like, I live here. The fuck? Like it just they were teasing a little bit about it because they were just always used to me like, just okay, bye guys, eat cut your plate, like I gotta go, like shit like that, right? But then, but at the same time, I don't think it surprised them because they saw this was probably also the first year that my family had to actually see me in varying states of like recovery or mental health or stuff like that. And this is stuff that I had like talked about or alluded to for years. And because culturally, like they still have a hard time like understanding like that you would deal with mental health the same way that you would deal with something like 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 an illness. You know what I mean? It's just like you got to go to the doctor for it. You got to take medication for it. You got to do preventative maintenance just like anything else. Otherwise, if you don't nurture it, then some stuff's going to happen because people are just like, oh, like mental health stuff's not real. But like then you see all the rates of alcoholism, and those two things have to be related, right? So I'm like, so because they had a little bit more transparency into what that was for me and what that meant to me and what that did for me, I think that also just helped them it helped them not change their view on therapy in general, but I think it helped them to understand me a little bit more. So this is the year that my family really showed up for me. And I'm really thankful for that because like there's people that you see the way they act at a crisis, you see the way that they act with their families, and you realize not everybody has that same support that we do.
Do you guys say I love you to each other?
We do.
Wow, that's huge for people who are not Asians. Hey, that's fucking
Yeah, yeah.
big.
Yeah. Like all the time. Like we FaceTime each other. Like I FaceTime my nephew. My son will always say I love you, even if he says it like I love you. Like it's just that's important, right? Like it's just like I have I have a different relationship with him than the one that my parents had with me because I was always like getting in trouble and doing all sorts of crazy things. And my son's not like that. He's very chill, but I lecture him just as much because I'm just like, you never know, right? Like I wouldn't be doing my job as a parent if I didn't at least voice this to you. And he's like, Mom, I know. Gosh, like just 15's a very fun age. Like it's like it shouldn't be, and I'm sure he's going to have some like he's going to do things that drive me crazy. But like it's very rewarding raising a little man that's so far making good decisions.
Oh man, you know what? I don't know if I've even heard the words "I love you" like growing up in my household. I don't think I've definitely never said it to
Yeah.
my parents. That's for sure.
No, for sure. Like I don't even think I had a real like strong relationship with my mom until I tell people this all the time, like until I was like 26. Like I didn't really get close to my mom until after my son was born because that was just the dynamic of our relationship, you know? Like it's not that she didn't love us. It's just more like she was always like sort of preoccupied. And you know, I understand now, of course, that like being an immigrant, and this is before you have social media, so you can't just go on Instagram, or you can't just like text your Humaira, right? Like you're literally just waiting for letters in the 1980s. You can't even afford like long distance phone calls. Like it's depressing. Like of course she was preoccupied, you know. But if I can't do anything about those first 25 years, you know, the next 25 years that we have together is going to be like awesome, hopefully. So
You said your whole family are workaholics?
my dad for sure. So my dad, me, my sister, like my cousins in LA, like we all worked like multiple jobs while we were putting ourselves through school. And
Jeez.
I'm the only one with a kid. Well, now my sister has a kid, but like on the West Coast, like for the longest time, like none of my cousins in LA have like, and there are closest blood relatives. None of them have like children, so they would be like working like weekends, they would be picking up shifts just to afford more vacations, better cars, and things like that. So yeah, to some degree, like we were all raised by workaholics. And so um we some of me and some of my cousins joke that like because this is how we were raised, this is why a lot of us have trouble maintaining like romantic relationships, because we're so focused on like career first. Like everything with me, career first. Like I've always picked my career over just everything, like just career first. Even with my kid, I'm not going to go so far as to say that I'd put my career over him, but it's just, to me, it's sort of like that whole thing that people say when you get on a plane, where you have to put on your oxygen mask before you help children, right? I just like I personally feel like I should be allowed to be the best version of myself in order for me to reasonably be expected to ably parent this child, right? I feel like a lot of people, they miss the idea, like, or they get the idea that like once they have a child, their whole life has to be like, it's all about this person now. Like it's all about, I have to sacrifice everything. They put themselves in this weird like martyr position, and it's just like, your kid's not asking for that level of sacrifice. Your kid's just asking for you to know enough to not let them die and to give them some guidance. But like, under no circumstances would any kid be like, well, now that you're a mother, you have to be a completely fundamentally different person. I just don't agree. I just don't agree. Like I have aspirations and dreams too. Like just because I have a kid, I can't have both. Like watch me. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. You go, girl.
Watch me.
I have to say, I don't. You know, you kind of like my wife in that way, just that nonstop driven work ethic that I've just never had, honestly. Like I've had like my balance problem is the complete opposite, where it's not nearly enough work, just too much. You know, enjoy in life and not, because yeah, my mindset's just always been, you know what? I don't know if I'm gonna die tomorrow. You only live once. You know,
Yeah.
whenever you watch those videos of like those rich old people, or just old people in general, they say, you know, what lesson did you learn? It's like, oh, I wish I didn't work so hard, because, you know, when you're this old, that's not what you think about. You're not like, oh God, yeah, I wish I could have worked more. No, it's all about the other things, about being in the moment and, you know, living life. And I'm way too far in that direction. And it
Same,
drives my
same. Like
wife fucking nuts. All right. It's so that's, for me, the struggle has been the exact opposite. It's just like trying to pull myself out of that and trying to have a little bit more direction, and kind of laying some more like groundwork, instead of just, you know, but just I was your prototypically like starving artist kind of thing, you know. It's just like,
yeah.
it's just like, and it's great, you know, when you're young and in your 20s, but once you get married, you can't be like that anymore.
Oh no, for
And,
sure. Like for
yeah,
me, like when I got married, I was just like, he was actually, the guy that I married was trying to convince me to go back to stand up comedy, because I also met him in that same environment. Not a comic, but I knew in my heart, I was just like, hey, look, it's either going to be marriage or comedy. Like I have to be in a position to pick. Like it's just, you know, and it's just like I like most of my relationships have like I want to say suffered, because not just of comedy, but like something that I tell people all the time is just like, my personal life always takes the hit. My personal life almost always takes the hit, because like there's certain things that have to come first, like whether that's not even just us having a job. It's just like, and I think this is something that you'd understand too. It's just you know in addition to having to support like ourselves and to give ourselves some passive income so that we can pursue the things that we want without having to work so hard for it, because the work is being done. Like we're setting ourselves up now so that we don't have to work like so hard in the future. A lot of people don't they don't understand also like how driven our lives are by like things like duty and responsibility, right? Especially like as a single parent, it's just like, where's all that shit gonna come from? It has to come from somewhere. It's gotta come from me. So like that's the thing that sort of like keeps me going and going and going, because I always want to make sure that I have like backup plans, because I know that like comedy is the one thing that I have that I think it's for a lot of us, the one thing that we have that's just for us, right? Because like I have an education because it was important to my parents. Like I never really enjoyed school. Like my test scores were always high because I clearly understood the material, but the regimentation of going to school is something even now I still struggle with. And I'm a grad student, and so that I don't know. I forgot where I was going with that, but like. Yeah, sorry. I totally lost my train of thought.
I was just talking about how I had the complete exact problem. Like when you were talking about how you have this drive because you have this responsibility. Yeah, I don't have that at all. Or at least like that's my problem.
I gotta tell you though that at my laziest, like I can be lazy at heart, and there has been more than one occasion where I remember one time me and my sister, we were supposed to go hiking to Mission Peak, and instead we ordered Snuggies. And then we watched Jersey Shore for like 7 hours. Like
that's a great day, like, though. Honestly, if you think about it, right? That's like great therapy. It's good for the soul.
Sometimes you just need a break. Like you're grinding, but like you just got to take that time for yourself. And like I take pride in the fact that when I know I'm capable, I know that I'm capable of being like the laziest piece of shit. And I think that's what makes it so rewarding. Is like when you work as hard as we do, and we're constantly, we're working hard for the things that we want now, and we're also working hard to have things in the background that'll help us like in the future, so we don't have to like burn the candle at both ends, so to speak. We should also just take a few minutes to just have fun sometimes. And for me, I'm very happy that instinct to be lazy, even though it's not more overpowering than my instinct to succeed, I know that the laziness factor is still there. I could just as easily order DoorDash all day and just go to town on a tub of buffalo chicken dip. Like, absolutely capable of that. But like, while we're young and able-bodied, like we got to get this work out of the way, and then we can afford to relax and eat hot Cheetos all day.
Yeah, well, I think you're definitely working hard. I if I'm being honest, I definitely cannot put myself in that category.
Come on.
No, really, because at this point, the Airbnb properties are making enough passive income where we don't have to work. Like especially like here in the Philippines, we don't have to work, and we're still generating enough income so that we can build the next bigger property. So like, and at this point, like, I've already created the management system. I've created the marketing system. We've hired the people to help us. So I'm not involved in the day-to-day anymore. I'm literally doing nothing. That's, for someone like me, that's a problem. Because like I'm starting to find like sometimes like, God, I gotta do something, with my day. I gotta have some reason to wake up, and going to the gym is just not enough. There's gotta be something else, and and I work on my comedy 4 or 5 days out of the week, but that's not an all day thing either. That can be anything.
Do you go to mics and shows while you're out there?
No, I don't go to Manila because where I am in Tagaytay, it's
Tagaytay.
Yeah, it's like that mountain retreat, so I'm so lazy. I don't want to drive through a bunch of traffic,
it's not worth it.
It's just not worth it. I mean, I got in touch with the main guy, Alex Calleja over here. We were supposed to do a show together. But at that point, that's when we were just still building the property. That's when I was really busy because I was involved on a day-to-day with the construction. Doing construction work myself with the shirt off, really getting in great shape and no, but really just like, overseeing everything. I was just way too busy. So then to drive another like 3.5 hours through bumper to bumper traffic just to, I don't know how many minutes I would. It's just like, I'm just too fucking tired. I don't want to go through
No,
the stress of that.
for sure.
No, it's
Does the guy
literally,
still have mushroom burger?
yeah, it's still mushroom burger, you
Hell
definitely
yeah.
know the guy if you know mushroom burger.
I do.
No, me working on comedy, it just consists of twice a week. I'll go over my tight 15 since that's already established. That's like an established feature set. I just keep it fresh in my mind so I don't forget it. And then I'll write. I'll either go over old bits and tighten them up and punch them up, or I'll write new stuff. So like out of like 7 days, I try to at least work on it in one way or another for like 4 or 5 days a week. Because I find like the next best thing to not going up is definitely doing that. So it kind of just still keeps me in that mode of thinking of writing and doing stand up. And to me, like every time I've come back, because I've been in the Philippines for a while now, I've actually every time I've come back after I shake off a little bit of the rust, I'm actually sharper than I was when I left, just because I spend that much time, punching up, tightening up, writing new stuff. It just kind of keeps me in that mode of how do I mine my life experiences and my perspective for material. It's just kind of honing in on what makes me me. Right.
That's the best way to do it. Because there's people that they want to focus on like writing jokes or writing like one-liners or whatnot. And it's just like, it's wild to me that they're doing that when their life and who they are as a person is so much more interesting than some of the topics that they're choosing to do. So it's like, I really like that you're like leaning in to like stuff that's like so true to you and sounds like your own voice. Like this is what I tell people all the time. Like there's some stuff where I hear stuff that sounds like funny jokes, but it doesn't sound like true to who this person is. It sounds like they're reading it off some paper. At that point, it's just like it has to become a part of you. Like there's certain things that it's just like, it makes more sense. Like the more you work on stuff that sounds like you, that you're minding your own life or experience rather than like fabricating a joke. Like I just, because I'm the same way. Like it has to come directly from my life. I've never been a joke writer.
Well, there's just multiple approaches to it, right? In terms of stand-up, there are people who are joke writers, and then there are people like us who mind their life, and we're just better than them. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
no. I mean, quite honestly, I just don't know how to do it any other way. To be perfectly honest, it's not that. That's just how I approach it, and for me, it came from because the years before I was ever doing stand up, I would listen to stand up comedy podcasts. If it's not Razor, Joe Rogan Experience, and all the experienced comics, all the national headliners, they all talk about. One of the biggest lessons they learned is like, you know what, you really should just talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about, mind your life, and then you just figure out how to make that funny instead of the other way around. So when I got started, I was like, okay, I'll just start there then. If that's what they say, well, you should do, okay, then that's where I started. And I feel like it's giving me a head start.
I listened to a lot of comedy Bang Bang while my son was a baby. Like that was the one that I listened to a lot.
What is that? Because I watched the show Comedy Bang Bang, and I love it. It's hilarious. Is the podcast, was it more kind of like just like a sketch podcast, or was it like a legit podcast?
So they would just they're a lot of those guys are like writers, and so they would talk about like they had little like segments that they would do like on their show, like the foam corner, like they would have like bits of jokes and shit, and a lot of these people I think are like UCB adjacent people. So you would have like a lot of those folks like talking on podcasts, and a lot of those people that run podcast. I want to say, is it called not Airwolf? There's like a company that like a parent company that is responsible for a lot of those like
one of those podcast networks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's just like I haven't. It's been a long time, but I did listen to a lot of that stuff when my son was teething, like when he was born, because he was super premature, and so I was in the hospital for like just a month and a half, just like watching reality TV, listening to podcasts, because the only channel that was working in the hospital of all fucking places, the only show that was working was Super Nanny, and I'm just like, I'm about to give birth, and you want me to watch this shit? Like, it's too late now. It's like, are you teaching me about consequences? Like, I don't understand the logic here. But yeah, I listen to a lot of like podcasts. There's once I remember the network of it, like I'll send it to you because it was like good stuff.
I gotta say, Ivy, you have like packed a lot of life in your years. You have experienced so many different things, and I mean, so have I. But so it's always nice to hear when someone else is it. But I'm just, it's interesting because when we're talking about how 90% of the stand-up community, essentially, they're not gonna be ride or die for you, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people, but it's just you're not gonna fuck with everyone. That's just the reality of it, right?
Right.
And
right,
it's just so funny. I always find myself really just setting it off with a certain type of people in the comedy community. Usually, it's those who are around our age, like that. That's the biggest thing, and it's usually because we've all lived like. We've had like actual life experiences, we've been through struggles, we've done different things. And I feel like it just seems to, I don't know, it's like attract likes, a like attracts like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with that because it's just like we tend to gravitate towards people that we have more in common with than people that are clearly in a different part of their life. Like, for example, like you and I have like far more in common than you and I, and versus like some of the people that are like 24, they're from some town, they don't have family in the Bay Area or anywhere in California really because they came here specifically to do comedy. So you notice all those people that seem like they're in a big ass clique. It's not that they think they're necessarily better than people, but like none of them are from the area. They don't have family. They don't have like other comics have to be their family because unlike us, like you have a family, I have a family, we have adult responsibilities. A lot of them are still like in a place where they could share a 3-bedroom apartment with 9 people and it would somehow still be acceptable. Like it's not so much me looking down on them, but it's just more like that part of my life is over and that's why we have nothing in common. You know what I mean? Like I feel like in the comedy community, I know that the people that I gravitate towards are like either other moms. Like 2 of my best friends are like other moms. People that are in my demographic that I actually have more in common with. Because also something that I have to remember too is that a lot of these young baby comics, these like less experienced comics, they don't really have like a bunch of real life experience. Like this is like the comedy scene and their social life. There's no separation. And so, for me, the separation is always important because it's like we have families and lives. Like this is not, like my life doesn't revolve around a bunch of like 24, 25-year-olds, like, showrunners, right? Like there's, that's what I noticed in being in this environment. And I think that's what's been like helpful is just like not getting caught up in like all of their shit because so much of what happens socially has nothing to do with actual comedy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bullshit that's flying around, right? In terms of the Bay Area comedy community, and I don't know, it's probably like that in all comedy communities. I'm guessing, right?
For sure.
And I guess that's one of the more refreshing things of people who are closer to our ages. Is we just don't fuck with that bullshit, Like it's just
no. Like I'm just like I don't get paid enough to talk to any of these people. I don't get paid enough to give a fuck what they think. They don't pay my bills. Jacob is more well behaved than a lot of these people, and I'm just like they could talk to the wall. Like I have the argument, they don't have the range. Like that's the way I look at it. I'm just like they don't have enough life experience to say anything that's impactful to me in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I know. I do have to say, like sometimes I do forget how much older I am than some of these comics until like Newman Shake.
Yeah, he's so young.
Yeah, he is so young. And one time he was hanging out with me and Wally Hippolito. And I don't know how we were talking about visas, immigrant visas, right? Filipinos having a hard time getting immigrant visas. And he just told me, you know what? It's like the other night when I was hanging out with my college buddies and we were getting drunk as hell, that's when I realized, oh yeah, you know what? This is kind of like my peer group. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And when I heard you guys just talking about like visas right now, I just realized you guys are so much older than I am. I was like, yeah, I guess we are, man. I didn't even really think about it because, because on one level we are compatriots, we are peers, we're coming up at the same time
Right.
in terms of
Right.
comedy, but yet on the other end, I am so much older than this guy. I've got almost 20 years of life experience on him. So yeah, we're definitely at different parts in our in our lives. And I am definitely the old fart. I'm just slowly coming to the realization that I am old. Because I mean, my mind almost still works like I'm still 16. It's just like, that's what I tell people if they ask me how it is to get older. Yeah, I'm definitely more mature, and my tastes change, but it doesn't erase the 16-year-old in me. That stuff just gets layered on top of the 16-year-old in me. That
I love being
16-year-old
old.
never disappears.
Like I love having like the hopes and dreams and the optimism of somebody like young, but at the same time, there's so much that I love about being old. Like I feel like honestly, you couldn't pay me to be in my 20s again. Like I feel like my 20s and my teens were where I made a lot of mistakes. My 30s were spent cleaning it up, and my 40s are when I'm finally starting to enjoy myself doing life. So I'm just like, that's what I tell people all the time. It's just like, as much as aging, kind of looking at yourself in the mirror, I'm like, oh shit, these lines weren't there. As humbling as that can be, to know that you're not that same person in your 20s. There's also like a sense of freedom that no, I'm no longer that person in my 20s. No, I don't ever have to set foot in another check cashing place. No, I don't have to know what it's like to have my, you know what I mean, to have like my account overdrawn, because you're responsible. You learn from your mistakes. Like there are certain things that like when you're in your 40s, it seems like the 20s weren't that long ago, but you look back on it, you're like, I have become a completely different person.
Yeah, that's a while ago. That is interesting when you think about it, right? Because over the years, you don't realize that you have transformed into a different person.
Yeah.
You get so used to thinking of yourself as a certain way. You kind of have to take like kind of step backwards a little bit and kind of really view yourself objectively. Like, oh my God, I'm actually a different person now. I do
Yeah.
things differently. I mean, the core of my personality might be the same, but it's just a lot more well-rounded. I'm starting to sound like I'm really full of myself. I'm really doing a great sales pitch on myself here. Yeah,
No,
I'm
you're
so
totally fine. You're
well-rounded,
selling it,
ladies.
dude.
Yeah, I'm really selling. But it is the truth, right? Because I remember I realized that when I was talking to this one girl in my 20s, I used to, I was a fucking dick, 19, 20 years old. I mean, I was a big dick in terms of, girls, right? You only got one thing on your mind. And,
Of course.
I got so used to thinking of myself as that way. And then one time I was talking to a girl, I think I was 22, 23, so I was so mature at that point. But even at that young age, I realized, oh, you know what? I'm not really that like 100% dickhead anymore. I've actually transitioned out of that, but I didn't realize it. But I just got so used to thinking myself as being that because that's what I was.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense
Like,
to you
I
at
think-
all?
No, it does make sense, because I feel like that's how my parents viewed me before the pandemic. Like we hadn't lived together since, because they were supposed to go back to the Philippines, and they got stuck here in the house that I was supposed to be watching for them. And so like, I hadn't lived with them since I was like 23, and I turned 40 during COVID. And so I think for years they had just gotten so used to viewing me as the person that was going out at all hours. Like I had to be picked up from someplace because I ran out of gas, or I got into a fight, or I got arrested, or just, some shit. And then like viewing, having that impression of what I used to be like versus the responsible adult that's working every day, that's like doing normal adult things, my parents had to sort of like reconcile that image in their head versus what I was actually becoming like what I had actually turned into as an adult. I think it was more entertaining than it was embarrassing, because I'm just like, what do you mean? Why am I home? Like I'm here. Like I'm at Target. Do you guys need anything? Like my life, but I don't want to say it's boring now, but like it's just such a grown up contrast to what they thought of me as when I was in my 20s. And, it takes a while for us to see it, but it also takes a while for the other people in our lives to see it until they're forced to see it on a daily basis.
When you look back, at yourself as a younger person, what would you say, like, what were like the biggest lessons that you ended up learning that's made a difference, in your life?
Honestly, I would have never touched alcohol. I would have also I think I would have gone to therapy sooner. I think I would have been a little like, I definitely should have gone to therapy sooner because I feel like there was a point in time where I was just like so reactive. And I think I was just operating off of like fight or flight just all the time. And that's a super stressful way to live. That's probably one thing I do differently. It's just like not have so much like pent up like frustration. I think I would have had a healthier outlet for some of my like personal frustration, and things like that. Because it's just like, I think at my core, at my essence, I think I'm generally a pretty upbeat, positive, happy person. But like growing up, I felt like there was always some sort of like cloud over me, which of course now I know was like undiagnosed depression and ADHD. But like I didn't know that back then, so I thought, okay, maybe we're just supposed to be miserable and wait for things to happen and just do the work, and that's just life is. It's like you just go to work and then you die. Like I had that view of life, and then once I started getting out of that mindset, like things definitely changed. So I think like the only thing I wish is that I had found that happy, like satisfied mindset sooner, and I accepted that it would have had to come from internal as opposed to like waiting for some sort of external validation that maybe is never going to come.
You were waiting for that external validation before?
I just more like I was always taught to not expect it. So, but at the same time, it didn't change the way that I felt. Like it didn't change the way that I felt about myself, which was still pretty like bad. And I'm just like, okay, well, if I'm not seeking external validation, but I'm also not giving it to myself, like what? There's no balance. Like, and I think I didn't understand any of that until I started going to therapy more often, because I noticed that a lot of what I thought was like normal behavior, like just getting fucked up all the time with my friends, barely waking up on time to go to work. Like I just thought that that's what people did after college, but it's just like you don't have to live like that. And I'm glad that I realized you don't have to live like that, because while I thought it was normal, I was also like miserable, and I wasn't getting to the root of why I was miserable in the first place. I was just like self-medicating and doing all sorts of crazy shit. So yeah, I don't think I definitely don't search for external validation now, but I know that I do feel like some type of way if I don't reach a goal that I was looking for. And I think because I think one of the things that we get mistaken with, especially with social media, is that more people care than they actually do. And the fact is most people actually don't care. So like I think once I started like drilling that into my own mind, it became easier to just like not put a timeline on like when I'm succeeding or when I'm getting goals accomplished or whatever, because no one's watching, really. No one's watching.
On a scale
I'd
of...
like to think that no one's watching.
Yeah, thanks. No one is watching here to you, especially since I've taken such a big hiatus from this podcast to begin to.
No, I mean no one's watching me. I don't mean you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
You mean the
no,
conversation doesn't revolve around me? Oh, my mistake. That's it.
yeah, the universe, Mike. Like what?
No, I was gonna say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a very high degree and 1 being a very low degree.
Sure.
How much do you not care what people think about you? 10 being you don't give a shit at all what people think about you.
That's a hard one, because I want to believe I really don't care, but like it would hurt my feelings if I knew my son had a terrible thought. At the same time, he's my son. He's supposed to have terrible thoughts.
Exactly.
So,
of course, I'm sure he thinks lots of terrible thoughts about you. You kidding me?
You're a bitch. You're a bitch, and you're not funny.
Yeah, 15-year-old boy. Come on. That's all we have, towards our parents and older people's negative thoughts.
Probably like maybe I'm hovering between like maybe a 4 and a 5. Because on one hand, like I feel like emotionally, yeah, it might bother me if I knew that my mom or dad felt a certain way about some of my decisions. At the same time, would that feeling bad be enough for me to change my behavior? Absolutely not. So that's why I say maybe like 4 or 5.
So you're probably higher than a 4 or 5 there. You're probably more like at a 7.
Oh, you mean like where people don't care, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't.
The higher it is, the more you don't care.
Maybe like 7 or 8.
Okay, yeah, okay. I think that's as much as I would like to think I'm at a 10. I think if you're a 10, you're basically a psychopath. if you,
Yeah,
if
you're
you're
you're an
100,
absolute
yeah.
sociopath.
Yeah, I think
You
that
know,
is
it's
the
like
technical definition of a sociopath or psychopath. Right? Is you have no feelings, no empathy, nothing.
yeah.
Yeah, that's like what one of the tests is. If you want to see if someone's a psychopath or sociopath, you sneeze. And if they don't sneeze at all, it's supposed to show like, oh, they don't have no empathy whatsoever.
They don't care.
I don't know if that's true. That's just boys. That's just something I saw on Netflix. I saw it on Luther. I don't know if you Luther. Idris Elba stars. He plays this great detective Luther. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I like to watch it. But yeah, I'd like to think, I guess to me, that's one of the biggest growths I had over the years. It's just really moving up that scale of not really caring what people, think about you. You know what I like what I like, and I'm not going to be ashamed of it. Who cares if I listen to Taylor Swift, right? So I fuck with it, right? Hey,
Yeah.
she's got really catchy songs. She writes all of that. She's very talented. It's like I'm going to go off on a Taylor Swift fan, but it's just like. Yeah, to me, that was one of the biggest things that I would say that led to my personal growth is really just being able to accept that. Hey, you know what? I like what I like. I'm not going to be ashamed of it. And maybe people try to give me shit about it. I'm not afraid to call them out on their own bullshit. Or even if I don't call them out on their own bullshit, I'm not going to apologize for liking what I like.
Yeah, we are who we are.
But at the same time, obviously, we have to care somewhat about what people think of us, right? Because if we didn't, we when we're on stage, we wouldn't give a shit whether we get laughs or not, right? It wouldn't bother at us at all if we did a joke and it completely bombed. So we care on a certain level. But I mean, yeah, you know what? We are at an hour and a half. We're going on like on an hour. I know. I try to keep these at an hour, but I think sometimes when a conversation just get going, I just, you kind of just don't want to stop it. I want to let it flow, but at the same time, I'm trying to keep them more digestible than, because I used to have the first version of my podcast. It was like Joe Rogan Experience. It would go on for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because once I get this, because, if you have the right person on the podcast, which I usually try to have, the conversation's free flowing, right? And
oh, for sure. Like that's so important, especially, you don't have like long moments of silence and stuff. Like you have one person that knows the right questions to ask and another person that, like when it flows, when it's right, it's right.
I do want to ask before we end, is that your son behind you?
Of course. That is not my son behind me.
Because someone's on it looks like they're waking up. There's someone I see some movement back. Okay, you don't have to tell me who it is. Is it who I think it is? Is it who I think it is?
No, it's not. No, it's not. I have to tell you. After.
Okay.
You've missed some shit, Mike. I gotta tell you after this.
Like 2 or 3 months I've been gone. Some shit's changed already. Okay. There you go.
It's so bad, Mike.
Life moves
so
on.
bad.
Okay, so that's connected to all that bad shit that you said just happened. Then.
Oh, it's awful! I can't wait to tell you.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's end it on that cliffhanger then. Ivy, where can people check you out if they want to know more about your stand-up dates that are coming up, or just want to check you out? Where do you want people to go?
Definitely go to my Instagram, like at Aivy Cordova. AIVYCORDOVA. My Twitter, I'm not gonna call it X, okay? I don't give a fuck. Twitter is still also same thing, Aivy Cordova. Those are the two things. I also have a website, ivycordova.com, but I even though it's mostly up to date, my calendar is still not updated. So yeah, go to Instagram first because also I take pictures of like my food and occasional cats. So I have range.
Oh yeah, you're so well rounded. All right, well, Ivy. No, I didn't mean. Did that come out sarcastic? No, I didn't mean that to be sarcastic.
No.
Anyway, thanks so much for being on, Ivy. That was a blast.
Dude, anytime. Let's do this again soon. And we gotta get food when you're stateside.
I know. Do you have a podcast?
I don't. I should, huh?
I feel like you should. I don't know if I feel like you and Joseph maybe should start something so you guys go back. Because you guys were already like trying to produce comedy shows together, right?
Yeah. Like I just, I have like, I'll show you one of these days, but I have like the best like old pictures of me and Joseph in our 20s. Like just,
Yeah,
long
I just
time.
feel like that's such a great foundation for a podcast, since you two go way back like that. And honestly, it takes a lot of the pressure off too, because when you have another person like that on the other side, you don't even need a guest. Honestly, the hardest
No,
part is getting there. So you guys could literally just shoot the shit and go off on each other. Yeah, kind of thing.
pretty
So
much, pretty
yeah, I
much.
mean, I would definitely listen to it.
I think a lot of people would listen to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Not that like my endorsements sound like glowing, like guarantee of success. But anyway, thanks so much for being on, Ivy.
I got you, man. Good
Uh,
talking to you.
Hey guys, so thanks for tuning into the podcast. And if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, make sure to hit that follow/subscribe button and make sure to give us a 5-star rating to give us some algorithm love. Okay? Thanks for listening.